The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by our proud sponsors, Rams on Demand, SeatGiant, Throwback Joe, and now our new sponsor, Kayvon Webster's new LA food truck, VYBE 305, from South Beach to Sunset. Hashtag catch a vibe. For more information, check out vibe305.com today. Now enjoy the show.
Down the middle to the end zone. Whoa. Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows.
It's Pitts. The Cal Roby Coleman
throws. Enzo caught. Touchdown. Tyler Higbee. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. LaMarcus Joyner returns to the lineup with an interception in London. 35-30. Robert Woods, first down 20. 10-5. Touchdown. LA! No, it's Goff who keeps it. And Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Met immediately and sacked. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack. He's decked by Ebu Khan. Picked off. Marcus Peters. Strutting his stuff. Mark Barron the last 4 weeks has been a Pro Bowler. He picked off Dak Prescott into Seattle territory, into the clear. 30, 20, Farrell Cooper 10. Farrell Cooper at the goal line.
Cousins sacked. Ndamukong Suh. Of all the guys, it's the rookie John Franklin Myers who knocks it out of Cousins' right hand.
Todd Gurley, 20, 10. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown LA!
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast, but it's not another one. I do have a dual podcast, first time I've ever done this. I am honored to be joined by our friends over at Rams Talk, Derek Ciapala and Norm Hightower. How's it going, you two? Thanks for joining the show.
Just living the dream, brother.
A wonderful day full of joy and cheer.
Love it. Absolutely love it. No, I thank you guys for joining. For those of you who are listening and are constantly listening, if you guys don't know who Rams Talk are, I'm going to give them the floor in just a sec. But be sure, before you do anything, as we move forward in this podcast, be sure to subscribe and review on iTunes, Rams Talk and Downtown Rams if you haven't already. And now I leave the floor to my buddies at Rams Talk.
Norm, you go first, man. Age before beauty.
Well, I thought you were going to introduce us, So, we're Rams Talk. We cover the Rams just like Jake does from Downtown Rams. We cover past, present, and future. We do a lot of history stuff, a lot of interviews with older players. And Derek and I like to fight a lot. So if you like a little back and forth banter, you'll never lose out on me kicking his butt on the program. So I'm Norm Hightower. I've been a Rams fan since the early, or I should say mid-1960s. I'm a former football coach, former football player, mostly defense all the way around. I'm kind of the X's and O's guy on Rams Talk. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I hunt and fish. I'm on a show called, now make sure you get this right, Horn Stars with an H. and we're a family hunting and fishing show on the Pursuit Channel, and I'm a tournament bass fisherman. So everything outdoors, including sports, football, hunting, everything else, that's where I'm at. Derek, go for it.
Well, I am Derek Ciapala. I was the guy who felt the inherent need to start Rams Talk, and we've been around, we're in our 6th season already. I've been a fan of the team for, I don't know, since I was 8, so late 80s. Actually, my first memory of the Rams is the last game of Eric Dickerson's career at the Rams, and that was when he took the field for the Browns on Monday Night Football, and they lost, but that was his last game, and from that point forward, I was hooked. You can find me on Twitter at Rams Talk. Well, personally, DC Apollo, and I don't like talking too much about myself. I am a social studies teacher, hence why we do a lot of history in our show. And shout out to my folks over at Crestview Rebels. There you go. Go Rebels.
Awesome. And I'm really happy because I nailed your last name. And I didn't ask you. It's one of my things. I always ask whoever I'm having on, Obviously, Norm, I think your name is, pretty obvious. My last name, everyone butchers. So, Derek, I'm just glad that I got your last name down, and we're all ready to go.
So why don't you say your last name for me, at least, so I know how to say it?
Yeah, so it is Ellenbogen. It actually means elbow in German. But people will call me Ellen Bogen. I've gotten Ellen Toboggan, which there's no T in case you didn't know that. And all sorts of stuff. Ellen Bidgen. It's just awful.
Dude,
Well,
I'm with you, man. I was Capalelli.
John Capoletti?
Ciapala, Ciapolo. My favorite one when I was in the Navy, they started calling me Chia Pet.
Oh,
That's
boy.
what they started calling me Chia Pet. So for the first part of my naval tour, I was just Chia Pet. They didn't even try anymore. They just gave up. So I was just Chia Pet.
Well, before
boy.
the family moved here from the other side of the pond, it was Hogentorn.
I don't even understand how anyone screws up your last name, Norm. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
Tower.
Although I've been called High Flower, Low Tower, all the fun things, and until they see I'm 6'4" and about 360, and then they back off.
Oh my god. Yeah, so we got a lot to talk about, guys. The 49ers are not a pushover, as we saw on Monday Night Football. Maybe that game shouldn't have been flexed out. But anyway, we do have our Rams and 49ers preview, and I'll start with you guys. This is kind of a big deal. Will the Rams break this 6-1 curse? Over the years, going back to the Greatest Show on Turf, it's been 6-0, and then they haven't been able to win Game 7. Well, this is Game 7, and it looks pretty favorable for the Rams, except, well, the 49ers just came off a pretty, I would say, competitive performance. Maybe some of that had to do with the fact that the Packers don't look like everyone expected the Packers to look like, but they still played fairly well, and they had a chance to win that game. Where do you guys see in this one go?
Go ahead, Derek.
Well, yeah, and it's been since 1985 since the Rams went 7-0. I can't believe it's been that long.
It's a lot.
It's a long 1985, the Dieter Brock year, since they went 7-0. Yeah, I like the odds of this game. I'm unsure of it in a lot of ways. They have a pass rush. They are solid against the run. Their offense is still dangerous, even with a couple of guys out. What really turns the game for me is who will make the mistakes. So even at 1-5, the 49ers are still dangerous to me. And right now the 49ers are just still more mistake prone. So I'm going with the Rams. And honestly, I'm hoping they blow them out. I'm hoping they go in there and torch them because they really need a blowout, in my opinion. They need to get these guys. They need to get Jared Goff, Todd Gurley, Brandon Cooks. They need to get them on the bench for at least a quarter. Just blow them out. Get out of there. That's what I'm hoping for. Will it happen? No, it's a rivalry game.
Well, I've noticed that the 49ers have kind of played at the level of their competition this year. You look at the Cardinals game where they lost by 10. They dominated the game, really, if you look at all the statistics, but they made a lot of mistakes. You look at C.J. Beathard now as their quarterback without Garoppolo playing, and he's done, an admirable job considering he's a backup. Against the Packers, he completed almost 70% of his passes for 245 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Quarterback rating of 115. That's not bad against a Green Bay newly built defense. So you kind of look at it and you go, well, against the Packers, they played tough. Against the Cardinals, they kind of dominated the game, but they lost. 2 interceptions from Beathard. Against the Chargers, who's a good team, as we know, they just lost by a few points. So I'm hoping that they don't play at the level of where we're at, because we seem to be a pretty good football team. We won, we haven't looked as good the last couple of weeks, but we've been on the road. And, injuries are kind of hitting us and stuff. So I kind of see the turnover battle being the big difference in this game. And the Rams don't tend to turn over the ball much. And the 49ers seem to give it up on some costly mistakes. So, I'm thinking the Rams are going to win it by at least a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that, Norm. And Derek, I definitely see what you're saying. I think the Rams really do need a blowout. That Packers game coming off a bye is going to be something where I think they simply need to just win this game, but a statement win would definitely help going back to, facing a formidable opponent. Although I can't knock the 49ers. One, they're an NFL team. Two, I mean, we saw what happened, with the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders were still, as bad as they've looked this year. To start out, the first half at least, that team was competitive. I think what you're looking at is a 49ers team that is probably going to be one of the more fun teams that tank for fans. So if you're a 49ers fan out there and you're, really upset about, possibly having a top 5 pick, this is probably going to be a fun season to have a top 5 pick. I feel like they're going to be in a lot of games. CJ Beathard just gives you a chance. He's not going to be, Charlie Checkdown. I mean, he's somebody that can go deep down the field. And when you have, a Marquise Goodwin, you have one of the young up-and-coming tight ends in football in George Kittle. You have guys like Pierre Garçon and Matt Breida. I think you do have a chance to compete in the game. And they have a lot of talent on the other side of the ball as well. Really what gets me, guys, is Kyle Shanahan, because I think when you have a young coach like that, that has that type of, I think I won't call him McVay, but I feel like he's kind of, the next tier below McVay, which in turn is going to keep you competitive. I think he makes some really solid decisions as a manager of the game. So yeah, I expect this game to be competitive to start, but I think the Rams is going to be kind of like the Raiders game, where towards the end they kind of just put the pedal to the metal and take over. I lean towards the idea that they are probably going to score over 30, and the 49ers, it'll be around, I'd say, 17 points. But, that's just me. Moving on, the key matchups in this game, because, I think... And obviously, with like Aqib Talib out, that would have been a nice matchup, Aqib Talib versus, maybe like a Pierre Garçon. But I think one of the key matchups here is going to be whoever is against Richard Sherman, because quite honestly, despite what we saw, all those videos that came out during training camp about him being slow and all that, he's actually had quite a season for, how long he's been healthy. So, who do you think he's going to match up with, and do you think that's like a legitimate matchup to watch?
Well, I think it's going to be tough to tell who he's going to match up against, because the Rams are going to probably, do what they've been doing and line up guys all over the place and kind of change it up. Without Cooper Kupp probably playing, Robert Woods will probably end up in the slot every once in a while. He'll probably be outside every once in a while. And, you just kind of don't know. But I would think that they probably try to keep him on Woods. And, yeah, I would say Robert Woods is probably who they're going to try to cover him with. Sherman will probably cover him. That would be my guess.
I'm kind of just thinking about one thing. And here's the thing. I haven't seen – you mentioned Sherman. What have you seen from Sherman this year that tells you he's close to where he was? That's an honest question, because I have not seen Sherman on film yet.
Yeah, no, I think I really just feel like he's not quite where he was, and I don't think he ever will be there again. I wouldn't call him the best corner in the league, but I would still say he's probably top 15. I don't see the sheer explosiveness out of him, but he is very decisive. He's quick to react, and he's been able to stick with his guys. There was a PFF thing that came out, and it was the yards per coverage allowed, and it was Sherman and it was Talib among the two top guys. I think I just saw that yesterday or whatever. But yeah, I think he's actually had a solid season. Now the problem is with him is, again, those lingering injuries. So he's missed, I believe it was 2 games so far, so it's kind of a smaller sample size. But from what I've seen on film, I actually have really been impressed with Sherman's ability to come back from such a ridiculous injury. I mean, anytime you have an Achilles tear, I mean, that can be really detrimental to, finishing your career, let alone getting back to where you were. So I think he's definitely going to be to somebody to watch. And, I also, Ahkello Witherspoon, I guess, he's kind of, he doesn't really do it for me, as far as what they drafted him to be. Like, he, coming out of Colorado, big 6'3" guy, on the, cross. I think really what the 49ers have that's really interesting is those two bigger corners, size, advantage. But it's funny because, Kupp is actually the bigger one out of the bunch. And then you have Reynolds. Now, Reynolds is probably going to go up against somebody on the outside. And then, like you mentioned, I think Woods is going to funnel his way into the slot, maybe, Cooks and alternate it. Although, I did see him, we'll talk about this a little later on, Reynolds was limited with a hand injury. So, I mean, we could see some Kadarius Hodge. That would be some, that'd be interesting. I know they picked up Nick Williams and JoJo Natson is on the roster. So, I don't know if they'll dip that far down the depth chart, but
that's really why I'm asking the question, though. I'm asking about Sherman because when you talk about the matchups that you're bringing up right there, the matchup that I'm really interested in is not who Richard Sherman covers. I'm interested in who's going to try and cover Brandon Cooks. I want to flip that around because I don't think they have the guys to cover Cooks. They're not going to put Sherman on Cooks.
So I don't think they can.
And so that's where my frame of mind is. You're asking the question, well, who does Sherman cover? I think by default it's going to be Woods, especially if he's not 100%. And that means who covers Cooks? Because they don't have the guy to cover Cooks.
They really don't. And that's a really good point because, we didn't really see that in the Packers game, guys, because the 49ers had the guy that you can't cover, in Marquise Goodwin. I didn't really see the Packers don't really have that guy that's a breakaway guy like that. I mean, obviously they have some guys that run in the 4-4s, physical freaks. Well, I will say this: Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I believe he ran in the 4-3s, and he's a freak. I mean, 6'5", runs in the 4-3s. I mean, he's fast and he's starting to really develop into something. So I won't say that, but To go to your point, I mean, I would agree. I don't know if they really have anyone to cover him. I don't know if they have anyone to even, pick up the pace with him. They're going to have to really rely on their back end, and they're going to need help over the top because, the bottom line is you can't leave, like you mentioned, I don't think you can leave Sherman on Cooks. I think Sherman's going to have to either be on Reynolds or Woods or vice versa. And then, Ahkello Witherspoon maybe, but even so, I think you're going to really... This game is going to come down to Jaquiski Tart and Adrian Colbert, although I believe Colbert was hurt in the Packers game, so we'll see if he's even available. But I think the safeties are really going to have to come up big in this one.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, whoever's covering Cooks, there's going to be a safety back there to help him out. They're going to have to do that, and that's going to open up the game for Woods and whoever else the Rams put in there. Hodge or who's the new guy they signed today? I doubt he plays that quick.
Nick Williams.
Yeah, Nick Williams. He does have familiarity with McVay, so it's possible. But I would expect to see the Rams tight ends see a little bit more play this week because of the fact that I think they're going to have to commit the safeties to cover, Woods and I don't think they have the guy to cover Cooks like you're saying. So if they got both their safeties, helping cover our two main receivers, I think that's just going to open up the door for the tight ends and everybody else. I think the biggest matchup is going to be, their defensive line against our offensive line. I mean, I know Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner really well. They both played at Oregon. Before I moved here, I lived in the state of Oregon and covered the Oregon Ducks. Met both of them, interviewed both of them. They're both excellent players, but they're not really known for their pass rush. Solomon Thomas hasn't played all that well. Earl Mitchell isn't, a huge pass rusher. So if Goff has the time to throw and the safeties are committed, I think that's going to open it, wide open for our tight ends. So that's kind of where I see things going.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I actually really like DeForest Buckner. I think he's turned into one of the better players at that position, and I think he's always somebody to watch because he can wreck games. He's done it before. However, going back to that point with Cooks, I think having that type of speed on the perimeter is really going to. I think they're going to play off the ball big time. I think you might have whoever's covering Cooks is 10 yards off Cooks, which I think is going to open up the door for a Todd Gurley screen here or, an outside zone run there. They did that against the Broncos. It's kind of something like, pick your poison. Do you want to, allow the Rams to continue to throw over the top with Cooks, or do you want the Rams to chip away at you with the short pass and have Gurley run 20 yards after the catch? It's hard to go up against this offense, and it's really, the 49ers I think are going to have to hope that they can just try taking advantage of the defense, because I don't see them slowing down the Rams offense. I don't see the Rams really punting in this one, maybe once. I think the Rams are really going to have to, shut them down on defense to get that blowout. I don't have any questions about their offense, and yes, I am one of those people, as stupid as it may sound. I do believe last week's struggles were because Jared Goff was wearing 2 gloves. I don't know why he was wearing 2 gloves, but I think you'll see all of a sudden his accuracy's back this week. I think they'll look completely different, and keep in mind, guys, last week was considered a down week for the offense. They only scored 23 points. They had over 400 yards of offense. So, if a down week is over 400 yards of offense, then, when they're at their best, they're going to be at their best. So I think this is, one of those games, I could see people, picking against the Rams because they don't have Kupp and overreacting to it, but there's too much there, and I don't really see it going any other way unless the Rams defense, makes this kind of like a shootout.
So I want to back up because you caught me a little bit there. You said that you think the reason why Goff struggled was the gloves?
I do. I really do. Because, I'll go back to the New York game I was at against the Giants. That game was like really, really cold, and he wasn't wearing gloves that time. But you go back to the New England game, that was the last time he wore gloves, and I don't know, the ball just didn't come out as effectively. And I know it was obviously really cold. Maybe he has one glove on, like his grip hand, but the double gloves thing does not work all that well. And I don't know if it sounds funny, but Goff's literally never gone 2 gloves, since the Patriots game back in 2016 in Foxborough.
I won't argue the gloves. I think that surely had to affect it some, but you got thinner air, the ball travels differently. There's colder air, it travels differently. There's a lot of factors. Plus, this is the most that he's had to run for his life, and with the pass protection breaking down. So I think you figure all those factors in. I don't know that the gloves were the only reason, but I'm sure they contributed.
I just look at, though, to me the pass rush was the big difference for him. We saw him getting antsy in the pocket for the first time since his rookie year. I'm perfectly willing to say, hey, the gloves are a factor, like you're saying, Norm. But I look at it going, hey, the Broncos covered the Rams receivers very well, A. And B, Von Miller and, oh boy, Mr. Chubb, Bradley Chubb, were on him all day long. Made him awful nervous. He's making throws. Even his arm motion was just rushed. And so, to me, it's more than just the gloves. It's more than just – the Broncos played the Rams passing game. Let me stress the words passing game very well. And bringing that around in the 49ers game, that's what has me worried about Armstead and Buckner. Can they get that rush on? I think the difference, though, is the 49ers secondary is nowhere near as good as the Broncos secondary is.
Well,
yeah,
the other question is, are they going to bring in a nickel? Are they going to bring in a nickel to help out? That's the other question. Can they afford to do that when you're looking at, Reuben Foster, Fred Warner, Malcolm Smith in the middle? Do they have to take one of those guys out and bring in a nickel to help cover. And if they do that, Todd Gurley's probably going to have a whale of a game. So they're in trouble on defense, I would think.
Yeah, and to go to your point, I don't know if they can afford to, simply off the fact that the way, somebody like a Fred Warner, can defend as a in the passing game. I watched him at the Senior Bowl. I mean, his range, he flies all over the field, and I was really impressed with his ability and coverage. And I mean, that goes back to just when he was at BYU and on film. But, then obviously you have Reuben Foster, which, again, Reuben Foster was put in a rough position like Anthony Barr was against Cooper Kupp, because on Monday Night Football, the Packers got, I believe it was Devontae Adams down the field, and Reuben Foster was the only one covering him. And then Malcolm Smith, again, is somebody else that I think works pretty well in the passing game as well in coverage. So they have some good coverage linebackers. I don't know if you can take them out and put Kwan Williams in. I mean, you can, but I don't know if I would do that the whole game. And that's where I just feel like this offense has too much an advantage. And to go back to what you guys were saying, I think the gloves had a major factor, but I totally hear you. I was saying coming into the year, the Rams were going to go 14-2, and I had one of their losses actually being against Denver, because I just felt like the altitude, and I felt like Case Keenum, last year you saw what he was able to do in Minnesota. I thought he was going to be able to have more of an impact in that game, but I'll take being I'll take being wrong. I will definitely take that. But I think the Rams offense is definitely going to bounce back mightily in this one.
You had them 14-2. Who was the other loss?
The Saints.
So I had them going 15-1, and the only loss was to the Saints.
How about that?
What did I have them at? I think I was.
Oh, you were probably 7-9 or something.
No, stop it. I think it was 12-4. I think it was 12-4.
Yeah, I think that's what you had them.
Well, I like those. I mean, they could go 12-4. They could go 15-1, and they could go 14. They could go 16-0. I mean, we don't really know what we're going to see with this team moving forward. I mean, you have to imagine they're going to continue, playing it the way they have. And I mean, Sean McVay's career record, what is it now? 17-6, right? 17-5. I mean, if we're factoring in the playoff loss, then it'd be 17-6.
And don't we only have like one road loss since McVay took over?
Yeah. Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
It's crazy.
The 9-1 on the road. Yeah, that's just insane. It has to be 10-1. 10-1 with that win last week.
Yeah.
So 7-1 last year, 3-0 this year. Those are bananas numbers, but teams are starting to figure out how to play them at home a little bit. So, I mean, at their home.
Yeah, I don't know, though. If the Rams offense can get back on track to where it was, and if we can avoid any more major injuries, and, one thing that I did a lot of game study and game film study on last week was the run defense for the Rams. And when we watched them get kind of run over a little bit by a couple of teams, I spent some time and did a lot of looking at the defensive line and linebackers on the run game, and they just weren't keeping their gap integrity. And we watched the game against the Broncos last week, and they seem to have fixed that. So if they can stop the run against the 49ers and continue to do well there, I think it's going to be tough for the 49ers to move the football. Even with our injuries in the secondary, I think that you'll see guys, like Joyner and John Johnson, maybe playing a little bit of, outfield out there.
Yeah, and it's really funny looking at what they were able to do, against running backs this year. I mean, obviously, we know in the Vikings game, Dalvin Cook was playing injured, and he didn't really even get going he didn't get going at all, really. And then Melvin Gordon, who's looked like a top 5 back this year. I mean, he had a solid game against the Rams, but it wasn't like, an amazing game or anything like that. Really, the best single game performance on the ground against the Rams has been Chris Carson, who's gone up against the Rams defense before. So, that's really been it. I was actually really impressed with their ability to stop the run against Denver. I think that was one of the really big takeaways in that game because, you have guys like, Royce Freeman from Oregon and Phillip Lindsay from Colorado. Phillip Lindsay's been terrorizing defenses all year pretty much as a scat back, but they've actually been using him in between the tackles as opposed to just as a pass catcher. And I mean, he only had 4 carries for 18 yards, and Royce Freeman, he averaged 2.4 yards a carry in this one. And really what it came down to was the fact that out of the running backs wise, Phillip Lindsay had 6 catches for 48 yards. But I mean, that's always been kind of the Rams' crutch. I feel like those guys can be dangerous. You saw Chris Thompson. I mean, I saw him in person last year. In the Redskins game, you saw, Austin Eckler, just guys like that are, it's never really the big bell cow that worries me for the Rams defenses. It's always, that scat back. Well, in this one, I feel like the Rams have to worry a little bit about Breida. We've seen his ability. I mean, again, small sample size. They've only played 6 games, but Breida was leading the league in rushing at one point. We've seen him, be able to kind of be that spark for the 49ers. And that's one of the things, I guess, with the run game. Are they going to be able to, stop these guys? I know they have kind of a big this monstrosity of running backs in their backfield. With McKinnon out for the year, they have Alfred Morris, they have Raheem Mostert, who randomly had a really good game on Monday night, and then they have Breida. Do you guys think that they're going to stop the run this week? Do you think it's going to be more like the Broncos, or could we see a game similar to the Seahawks in this one?
I wouldn't be surprised if they gave up 100, but Alfred Morris has kind of been their Achilles heel. I hate saying that. Right now I'm on injured reserve with a torn Achilles myself, so Achilles heel is a bad word for me, but Alfred Morris has kind of torched us in the past. So, if they can continue to play really good gap defense and keep their gap integrity like they did last week against Denver, I think we'll be all right. It's just, sometimes you don't see what's going to happen until the second half with the Rams. They make their adjustments at halftime and they come out and they end up, pulling away in the second half. I'm really hoping they can stop the run in the first half and make it tough on CJ Beathard and make him make some mistakes, and hopefully we can capitalize on those.
A couple things going back too is, in fairness to the rushing argument, and again, I'm not trying to beat the Rams up on this, is Denver, for whatever reason, abandoned the running game when they weren't out of the game yet. So the Rams stopped them a couple times and they just said, okay, screw it. And they just went on Case Keenum's arm. So while they were improved, we don't know how improved they are yet. And to me, going this week, I look at it going, there's an easy way to stop the run in this game. Get out, offense, just blow them off the ball immediately. Just go, our offense, get out early, 2-3 touchdown lead, make them one-dimensional, and then all we got to do is worry about George Kittle and Marquise Goodwin. That's what I would like to see them do, is let's make them one-dimensional and not have to worry about that double-headed snake that they have in the backfield right now, and then it's not going to be a problem. And that's the Rams' offense has the ability to do that. In the second quarter this year, they have outscored opponents by 31 points, just the second quarter alone. Get that early first half lead, knock them off the ball, make the 49ers one-dimensional, and this is a win that is a blowout when we would hope it would be.
Yeah, that has to be. I mean, that really has to be the key to the game. Once you make them one-dimensional, no matter if you have Garoppolo or you have Beathard out there, again, one-dimensional football is not the way to play. And I think that you could see a few interceptions in this game. I think Beathard's a gunslinger, whether he's good at being a gunslinger or not. You saw him give, receivers an opportunity as well as defensive backs. I mean, we're talking about the interception to Kevin King at the end of the Monday Night Football game. And the 49ers, just one thing I keep noticing is just they don't go away. And I think it was Norm that mentioned this earlier, how they actually dominated the Cardinals statistically. And, Even when Garoppolo was out, they didn't really go away in that Chargers game, or the Chiefs game. And then the Chargers game, they were in it. I don't know. Like, I don't look at this team again, like, just to shake them off. But this is an ultimate opportunity for the Rams to blow out a team before they go up against a team coming off a bye. Because I don't know if they've gone up against a team coming straight off a bye and a team as talented as the Packers. So they really have to, get the ball rolling on that. My X factor for this one, I'm going to say right now, I'll say this, Josh Reynolds, because I really, I wonder, this is a huge opportunity for Reynolds. I don't think Kupp's injury is going to really extend. I mean, he might miss the Packers game, but this is a huge opportunity for a 4th-round pick that was kind of in line for, a heavy workload coming out of the draft, but then they traded for Sammy Watkins last year, and it kind of pushed him to the back of the line. And then this year, Sammy Watkins is gone. You think, oh, well, Josh Reynolds is coming up, and then, the Rams go out and they, trade their 1st-round pick for Brandon Cooks. So, I just look at that where I'm like, that's definitely something that, you have to keep in mind. And Josh Reynolds, again, I mean, it was the first game he stepped in, there were the injuries to Kupp and Cooks, and he had 3 straight touches. This past game, I know everyone likes to pin that pinball interception on him, but I mean, that was actually just not really a great choice by Goff, and it was a batted pass anyway. So I don't know, guys. I mean, I think one of the X factors I would say is Josh Reynolds, and then on the defensive side of the ball, I would say it's Corey Littleton, because this guy's leading the team in pass breakups, and he's actually shown his ability over the weeks to really continue to grow as a linebacker. I really love him in coverage. He just stands out every week. And this week he's going to go up against George Kittle, so I think it's a huge opportunity for him. Those are my 2 X factors, I would say. What do you guys think about that, and what are yours?
You just want the Rams X factors? You want 49ers X factors too?
Really just the Rams X factors.
All right, Norm, go. Sorry.
I'd say Marcus Peters on defense. He's going to have a good game and not give up the deep ball. And if he can do that, I think that's going to be huge for the Rams defense. So I'll go with Marcus Peters on defense. On offense, I hate to sound predictable, but it's got to be Todd Gurley. If Todd Gurley can, rush for over 100, keep putting 5-6 yards of carry out there, make 2nd down and 3rd down real short. I think that's going to be a key for the Rams to be able to put a lot of points on the board. Lastly, I'll say McVay's play calling in the red zone. If he runs the football more, I think that'll be a huge X factor for us.
All right, so for me, my X factor on offense is going to be Gerald Everett. Okay, I believe he's on the cusp here of, especially with Kupp out. They're going to try and look more in the middle of the field here. They're going to have opportunities with like Jake was saying, their quarterbacks are going to play off the ball more. There's going to be room underneath to make some plays. So I want to see. I think it's going to happen. They're starting to target Joe Everett more. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, and I think he's an X factor in this game. He's a guy that sooner or later a McVay offense is going to start getting back to those tight ends, and little by little we've been seeing that. Defensively, I'm going with Mark Barron. That is where we're going to see the Rams really stopping the run in this game or not. If they keep gap integrity, as Norm was saying, if he and the other linebackers can get in there and make some plays, then this isn't going to be a problem on Sunday. But Mark Barron, to me, is that key. He's the one he's been that missing link for much of the year, and if he's in there hitting people, it's on. I think we're going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mark Barron. Same thing with Gerald Everett. Excuse me. Gerald Everett is starting to get more and more opportunities and more reps because I mean at least I believe that that shoulder injury. I think kind of put him behind a little bit. And now that he's, fully healthy and he's probably up to speed, I think they feel comfortable with, gradually giving him more reps each week. In a game against like the Packers next week or moving forward to the Saints, I think you could be seeing Gerald Everett as a legitimate piece that they have to lean on due to the increase in competition. Like, I do think that it's going to get to that point where you'll see, them going up against a team that can take away, somebody like a Cooks and double team him or something like that where you need to rely on Everett. So I definitely agree with that. With Barron, I mean, he's coming off, I believe it was an Achilles injury, I think it was an Achilles injury. He's coming off an Achilles injury, and he's now having to play, in the NFL as a starter, and everyone's expecting him to go right back to form. I mean, he didn't really have any time to prepare during the off season. It was pretty much all rehabbing and trying to get back to full strength. So I definitely would agree with you. I think he's an X factor, and I think he's also another guy where over the year you'll start to see him, get more comfortable, and I think he's really going to get acclimated. And I believe last year he finished in the top 10 in run defensive production for linebackers per Pro Football Focus. So I think he's going to be up to that form by the end of the year. And the Rams are a little lucky in that regard because they get guys like that back. And then, you talk about somebody like Obanai Okoronkwo, who we'll talk about a little bit later. But they're going to be getting guys back towards the end of the year. So, it's almost like you're getting reinforcements. So you learn how to play with what you have now, and then you're just going to be adding on. So that's kind of one of those, it sucks to lose somebody, but like, for instance, Talib, if the Rams really start firing on all cylinders on defense and they all learn to really play together as far as like having, a Troy Hill next to a Marcus Peters or maybe a Sam Shields, or, maybe they use Nickel Roby-Coleman and platoon, Blake Countess, or maybe they, give Darius Williams their waiver claim an opportunity. And then all of a sudden now you have, that chemistry, and then you can add Aqib Talib, and now you're just getting better. I think that's one of those rare things where, again, it sucks to lose a guy, but when you add on towards the end of the year, that's when a team can really start to build off of that. And I think the Eagles did last year when they got Sidney Jones back, as well as what's his name from the Bills that they got, Ronald Darby. So I do think the Rams are kind of leaning in that way, moving forward.
Yeah, having Talib back will make a huge difference, especially if the secondary can start to gel now. Troy Hill had a rough game last week. I'm a big Troy Hill fan, obviously, because he's from Oregon, but even last week I was kind of shaking my head a little bit. I'm hoping Sam Shields can start playing more downs than he's been playing. I don't know if they're doing it just to get him back to the speed of the game, or if he needs more time to get in shape or whatever. But, there's been some times where he's been real close on intercepting it and taking it back for a pick six on several pass defenses. So I would agree with you. I think that, getting Talib back, Okoronkwo, hopefully he'll be able to come in and show us what he's got here in the next couple of weeks. And just overall gelling of the defense. I don't think we're in trouble yet. I think we're still looking pretty good. And, we're also a young linebacker core too. So, and Corey Littleton's played phenomenal for being his first year at the position, as a starter. So I have no complaints there at all.
All that said, this team is in need of a bye, man. Oh my gosh, they need a bye. And it's going to be a while before they get it. They could really get some healthy time. And they could really use a break, or getting those injuries just piling up. And sooner or later that will cost you. And so, fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever we got to do. Hold a seance. I mean,
you're not wrong though. I mean, when you have guys like, I honestly, and we're gonna dive right into this in a sec, but I honestly was really taken back when I saw Longacre did not practice, and then I saw the reason was a back injury, because that is not what you want to see. You saw what happened with Robert Quinn. I hate back injuries. I think, it's taken Joe Flacco like 3 years to recover from his back injury. They're brutal, but on top of that, when you re-injure your back, that's another thing that is just worrisome. I don't know. I worry about Longacre's long-term health. I really do. And I think when you're talking about Longacre being probably your best edge guy, that's when you're really hoping to strike gold with an Okoronkwo or a Trayvon Young or a Justin Lawler, because I just don't think, I really like what they're doing on defense, but the one area of need, I think, is on the edge. And I think Okoronkwo, watching his film, going back to Oklahoma, just somebody that I really enjoyed, following and watching. I mean, he can be that spark. However, he's also going to have his fair share of rookie mistakes. He has an issue, with as far as setting the edge. He's somebody that can be very aggressive, going with that inside spin move and kind of leave the edge wide open. We saw that quite often with somebody like a Connor Barwin. I do think the Rams are in need of a legit rusher, but also somebody that's going to be able to set the edge. And if Longacre gets hurt, see, like, I don't know about you guys, but I haven't been extremely impressed with Samson Ebukam. And he's raw. Like, I totally understand that. But he hasn't, like, jumped out to me in any way. I don't know, like, what have you guys seen from him?
Well, I've known Ebukam for a long time, being, that he came from Eastern Washington. I'm an old Pac-12 guy and lived up in the area, so I watched him play a lot. And he has his moments where he can be impressive. I think right now there's just a lot going on for him, and I don't know that he's really caught up with the speed of the game yet. When I watched him play preseason here in Baltimore against the Ravens, I watched Joe Flacco come around the edge, and Ebukam couldn't catch him, and that just isn't him. He's usually faster than that. So I would say if he can make it through this year, all right. I think next year he'll probably be, a solid starter for us. As far as Longacre goes, it was my understanding that he only went out of the game with back spasms. I don't think it was an injury to his back, more that it was back spasms. So I'm hoping that he'll be able to go this week and it's not a serious injury. It's just back spasms. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Knocking on wood on that.
One other thing too, the Ebukam, I had the really cool opportunity to interview him at Rams Fest and just talking to him about his defense and who he's playing with. The one guy he really gravitated towards, you can see it in the conversation, was Mark Barron. And Mark Barron's just now getting back. So what I'm interested in seeing is how does his play improve with Mark Barron next to him again in the lineup. And my guess is he'll be better. We'll see an improvement there, having his road dog with him in the lineup. That's kind of how I'm getting it.
I like that. You're pointing something out that I haven't heard, and I will definitely be watching that little relationship there. As far as, the rest, I mean, I personally think that they need to go with more of a rotation on the edge. And obviously, like, we both have interviewed John Franklin Myers. I mean, he's a friend of both of our podcasts, and I think he's given the Rams a lot for, being this raw kind of quote-unquote tweener. But I think, each week he seems to get better. I don't know, what they're going to do with it. I think they view him more as kind of, hand in the dirt type of guy, whereas Ebukam kind of, goes from a sprinter stance. I don't know. I think I really want to see more of Trayvon Young. And I've actually, albeit it's been 4 snaps for Justin Lawler, I want to see more of him as well. I think, going more rotation based. Keep in mind next year they'll have, guys like Morgan Fox and Garrett Sickles back. So we'll see, how much they're able to contribute or if they're able to even make the roster. I think Morgan Fox definitely would. And I think those guys would have helped this year. But it'll definitely be interesting once, Okoronkwo joins the fray, because I think he's the most talented rusher on the roster, as crazy as that sounds.
I would agree. I think Okoronkwo is going to make a huge difference when he's able to come in and play. I do have concerns about, like you're saying, can he hold the edge? But I don't know that that's really what Wade Phillips wants him to do when he's in there anyways. I think he wants him to, put the crosshairs on the quarterback and just go and let the linebackers cover. But I think he'll be a legitimate difference maker for our defense once he's able to come in and perform up to the level that he's been known for. And, being in the pros now, hopefully he even steps it up another notch. Lawler, I don't know if you've seen him personally, but when I saw him in Baltimore, that guy's a beast. I mean, I really think that if they can get him acclimated into our defense and get him, more up to NFL speed, and I really think he's going to be a difference maker down the road. He's very athletic, very well put together. I was impressed by him, and I'm hoping to see him get more snaps.
Well, that's what they need to do. And well, let's just go back to the Rams defense over the last 5 years, because we can all agree, I think, that the Rams defense has been miles ahead of the Rams offense for most of this time, right? We can all agree to that. And during that time frame, the Rams were most effective defensively when they were rotating guys in and out across that defensive line. And whether they're in the old 4-3 or this modified 4-3-3-4 scheme, that's still the MO. The more guys that can move in and out, the more guys that can keep fresh, the more guys that are effective rushing the ball, rushing the passer come the fourth quarter, that's just gravy now. That's what Rams football has been defensively for the last 5 years. And we haven't really seen that this year as much because they haven't had the guys are all freaking hurt. So that's what I want to see. I want to see the development of those guys on the edge to be what we've always known the Rams defensive line to be in the last 5 years, which is rotation around those core guys.
I think Franklin Myers gives you that, and then you've got Ethan Westbrooks as well, who at times Ethan Westbrooks looks like he could be a starter for any team. So I really think that with Franklin Myers in there now, you can really have a good rotation going through there.
Yeah, especially like in pass rushing downs. He comes in. I mean, I saw him with Brockers, replacing Brockers and putting him next to Donald and Sue, and then we've also seen him on the outside. I think that versatility, he's kind of like that. I won't call him a Swiss Army knife because I don't think that's fair to somebody like, a Marquis Christian that can be that big dime backer, can play safety or sometimes play some corner and is a special team guy as well. But he is something similar to that. So I think that's definitely, a key piece. But going back to what you said, Norm, with Justin Lawler, I saw a lot of draft Twitter calling this guy, he was very, what's the word I'm looking for? He was stiff. I just didn't agree. I felt like it seems like when one person says something during this draft time and everything, it seems like everyone kind of piggybacks on that assumption where, he's too stiff to play on the edge and he's more of a, 4-3, defensive end. I don't know. I disagree. I was really impressed with what I saw at SMU. And then he, I think it shows a lot that he was getting first team snaps, in camp. Now I get it. This isn't a coach that plays favorites, unlike, other coaches in the past, but, he had to earn his way to that point. And again, to go with your point against Baltimore, I mean, he did look like a beast. And, if Pro Football Focus has anything to say about it, his 5 snaps, apparently, or however many snaps he's taken, he's had he's made the most of them. He's rated the highest outside linebacker on the team, and he has a really high grade for obviously in limited action. I just want to see this guy get more of an opportunity, as well as Trayvon Young, because I have a hard time. Scratching somebody like Trayvon Young and keeping somebody like, Justin Davis in the lineup. I think you need Trayvon Young more than you need like a Justin Davis or, somebody like that. That's just my take. I firmly believe Trayvon Young earned his spot during the preseason, and I want to see what he can do, in a rotation. And the rotation's the best way to go because you don't have a Von Miller, you don't have a Bradley Chubb, you don't have a Khalil Mack, and I think it's the best way to keep guys, firmly, involved and and keep them fresh. However, I will say the Rams do miss, regardless of what anyone says, the Rams miss Dom Easley, obviously due to injury, but the Rams miss guys like Nick Fairley and Kendall Langford that were able to kind of come in and rotate. I do think that they are missing that. And, Easley was supposed to be that, but then they used him as an edge guy, and he was the best looking edge guy, and now he's out, and I don't know if he's going to be back. He's on the IR, and you can only designate 2 guys to return from IR after the new rules, so that would leave them to decide between Talib, which really isn't much of a decision. I mean, he'll be back, and then you have Farrell Cooper, and I think it'll be a little tough to bring back Easley, even to say if he's ready or not.
Yeah, I don't think Easley's going to be ready until next year. That's just, I mean, that guy's got the worst luck when it comes to a knee that I've ever seen.
Denari Alexander.
Yeah, well, and don't forget also that the Rams only have a set amount of injury reserve guys they can bring back now. So I think, what was it, 2 they can bring back?
Yeah.
And they have like 4 or 5 that are guys who could be contributors. So I'm really interested in seeing who they're going to choose. Who's coming back, who can play this year and who's not. We know Talib will be one of them, right? So then you only have one more. So you only have one more. And I don't know that would be easily. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of even if he's ready or not, and yeah, I don't know if he'll be ready or not. But we're talking about injuries, so we'll talk about this injury report real quick. Greg Zuerlein, he is back. The Rams did release Cairo Santos, and signaling Greg Zuerlein is healthy and ready to go. He almost broke the single season points record last year, and then he had the back injury. This year he came back, and then he got hurt again, so he's back. The Rams had mentioned earlier Josh Reynolds, limited participant with a hand injury. Brockers did not participate due to a shoulder injury. Cooper Kupp, although he hasn't been officially ruled out, it's looking like he's going to be out. It's pretty obvious he's not going to play with an MCL sprain.
Well, and Rams did. The Rams ruled him out today.
Oh, they did rule him out.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, he's officially ruled out. And then Matt Longacre with the DNP with his back, and then Saffold with a DNP with his knee, but he is actually expected to go. So, any of those stick out to you?
Nope. That's pretty much how I expected to see it. I think
the 49ers one does.
Yeah.
The 49ers have so many injuries. It's unfortunate, especially when you get a guy like, a Dante Pettis in the second round, and this is his opportunity, and this is like what the fans want to see. You lose your franchise quarterback for the year. You want to see guys like that be able to get an opportunity now in a lost season, and they can't even see that. So it's a little brutal, especially the way Pettis started out his season, and then you talk about losing McKinnon before the season started. So, and that, I believe, guys, that was in training camp, or that was in a practice.
Yeah, I think it was right after training camp, right before the first game of the season.
Just brutal. Absolutely brutal. With that being said, so we talked about the Rams injury report. The 49ers injury report is very long. Although I will say that Dante Pettis did participate in the walkthrough. I don't know if he's going to play. He was limited. So was Sherman and Trent Taylor, their impressive slot guy. George Kittle, who you could tell George Kittle wasn't 100% in that game, and they didn't really lean on him. He has a knee injury. Breida actually has 2 injuries. He hurt his shoulder and his ankle, but they were all limited. And then full participants: Reuben Foster, Joshua Garnett, Marquise Goodwin, Jaquiski Tart, and then guys that did not practice. This list is long. It's almost it's 3 out of 5 offensive linemen that are starting. Mike Person, former Ram, Weston Richburg, Joe Staley, and then you had Pierre Garçon, 2 injuries, a shoulder and a knee injury, Jimmy Ward, hamstring, Kawan Williams, shoulder, and Akella Witherspoon, concussion. Guys, that's 3 out of their top 4 corners that did not participate, and this is Wednesday.
Wow, are we going to play their practice squad or what?
I mean, that's less than ideal, right?
Oh, wow. No kidding. I'm sure that the offensive linemen are just, they played Monday night, so I'm sure they're just getting rest. I would expect all of them to play, but that's a long list.
It really is. I mean, their corners, they would start, Richard Sherman was a limited participant, so no one, we'll say this, the top 4 corners didn't fully participate. Sherman is likely going to be a go. And then Akella Witherspoon and Kawan Williams, we'll see. So then it would leave, and Jimmy Ward for that matter. So it's Sherman, and then the next, to start next to him would be Greg Mabin. And then you'd be looking at maybe a DJ Reed, who's kind of a safety corner hybrid. And then Tavarius Moore, I believe he was a 3rd-round pick from... What school did he go to? Now that completely escapes me. Southern Miss. So, yeah, you'd be kind of digging into the bottom of their depth chart, and that would really put even more pressure on Jaquiski Tart and Adrian Colbert, like the guys we just previously mentioned.
Yeah, no kidding.
And they have 1 cornerback on their practice squad, and that is Emmanuel Mosley. So he might have to get ready because he might be playing in this one. So we talked about Okoronkwo a little bit. When do you guys expect to see him back? He practiced for the first time this week, and he, from what everything I've been seeing and hearing, Okoronkwo has been ready for quite some time. He just had to really abide by the PUP rules. So do you guys expect him to be back next week, or like what's the timetable on this guy?
Define back, like playing in a game, or
53-man roster back.
Oh, wow, jeez.
That's what everyone wants to know right now. I mean, you have a 6-0 team, and all anyone cares about is the 5th rounder that hasn't even played a snap.
I'm guessing he'll be back at Green Bay.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I also wonder too. You bring him on the roster. Who are you taking off the roster?
Tanzel Smart.
Maybe. Yeah. Because who else? You just brought a bunch of corners on.
Yeah.
You needed a receiver. You're not going to go dump a receiver. I guess really the factors are how quick does Kupp recover, and do we hear any good news coming here soon on Talib? And those are things like that that'll be a factor of who you're cutting. I don't know. The injuries, no matter. I don't think people realize how serious the Rams injury issue is. I mean, because we look at the injury report you just brought up, and there's like 5 names on there, but do you know how many we have in the IR or on the PUP? It's off the. This is more injured. The Rams are more injured now than they ever were at any point last year. So try and figure out how you're going to move this roster around. I'm glad I'm not the guy making that decision. I'll go Green Bay because I think something's going to happen between now and then. But I don't know how you move that without somebody else getting hurt. Unless you, like you said, Tanzel Smart.
I don't know how he made the 53, to be quite honest. I sound like a hater, though. I mean, realistically, guys have to do more than just the preseason, but I watched every preseason bit of film, and wow, I could not believe. I mean, he had the worst preseason games I've ever seen of an interior defensive lineman.
Come on, Jake, you know the real issue here is, you know what, you still want T. Gray on the roster. That's what really you want T Gray on the roster. Should just cut Smart. I want T Gray there. Just give me some T Gray.
It's hard, man. No, honestly, I really was shocked they didn't keep Omarius Moore. I mean, clearly the reason was to give number 94 to John Franklin Myers, but but no, I liked him, and honestly, I want to see Sebastian Joseph Day get a shot. Or I'll spread this out, guys. I just want to see the NFL get rid of the whole scratch, like the 6 or 7 inactives, because I think it's ridiculous. That's what I want to see.
Go with the full 53.
Well, that's the argument that I made not too long ago, isn't it? On our show.
Exact same argument.
That it's just ridiculous in this day and age where players are getting hurt like they are. You already have them on the roster. Why are you not expanding rosters out to where these teams can make better decisions? If you want high-quality football out there, if you want people to go out there and pay tickets to your games, and you want this to be like the league that everybody wants to watch because it's the league that provides good football, good sport, then why on earth would you just keep limiting what these teams can do? That's the same problem I have with the salary cap, by the way. If the Rams are willing to go out there and pay massive amounts of money for a player, why would you stop them from doing that when other teams aren't willing to do it?
I agree.
So I really believe that some changes need to happen because parity's good to make sure everybody has a chance. Fine, so be it. You know what? But here's the problem with that. When everybody has a chance, you don't see true excellence anymore. You really don't.
Yeah, we did the whole luxury tax debate and things like that too. I would at least like to see them let the whole 53-man roster, play in a game or attend a game in pads and be eligible to play.
I absolutely agree, guys. I've brought this up so many times. Jim Everett was pounding the table for it. I had Leroy Irvin on here who was saying there should be a 65-man roster. I mean, there's things that they can focus on that I think that they're not. The 10-man practice squad is great. They even increased it to 11 for select teams with I don't know if you guys knew about that, the international. It's kind of like a foreign exchange student, but it's for practice squad. So you have the international player. I don't know. It just seems to me like it. So it's more like a chess game, I guess. That's kind of like what they're getting at. But I mean, at the end of the day, we've seen how freak injuries are. So you're you're basically gonna penalize a team for only keeping, since they have to keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster because the third quarterback's too good to put on the practice squad, but not good enough and not ready enough to start or play in a game for that matter. And you desperately need this guy to be active on special teams. You need this guy because you're low on offensive line. So you have to basically inactivate one of your quarterbacks. Your 2 quarterbacks get hurt, and now you're stuck with emergency quarterbacks like maybe your running back that knows how to throw from high school or your punter. It doesn't seem right. And they definitely need to fix that 100%. Just like the tying too, by the way. Like switch to college football, or modified college football rules in overtime. Like they got a lot of stuff they need to work on.
One of the reasons I've never been a soccer fan is because there were far too many ties, and now all of a sudden in football, here we go again. And it's like, yeah, I agree. We got to get rid of it. We got to figure out a system so that there are no ties in the NFL.
I always thought that the easy solution for that is I don't like the college system where they start at 25, but put teams at midfield for overtime.
Yeah,
just start them at midfield, and they have to at least earn field goal position if worst comes to worst. And to me that's an easy solution that makes a whole ton of sense. But no, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Well, with a healthy Zerline, you could almost make it from midfield. So.
True.
Well, guys, with what you're saying, I mean, and I know we're going off a little bit here, but like I had Kyle Sloter of the Vikings on here, and he said, basically, one of the key things, the reason guys don't like overtime is because how far you have to go down the field and everything, and if they shortened up the field, they'd be able to keep it going, and by not shortening up the field, you risk injury and all that. But I will say this, the NFL kind of under the radar took the 15 minutes and made it 10 minutes. And now I think you're seeing the repercussions for that. They're now 10-minute overtime periods. And I just don't...
Yeah, they're doing that for player safety.
Yeah.
Trying to minimize that. But all it's going to do is lead to more ties. And,
exactly.
The Browns, legitimately, they could have had like 3 or 4 ties already this year, the Browns. I don't see... Fans pay money to go see a team win or lose.
Well, maybe you do it from the 25, but you don't allow any field goals. First team to score a touchdown wins.
I could see that.
That would be all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just they gotta figure something out. Just like they have to. It wouldn't take. It really wouldn't be a big deal if they just started allowing 53-man rosters to be 53-man rosters and allowing all guys to be able to compete. And I mean, I'll go further with this. They need a disabled list, kind of like in baseball, because so now the Rams kind of have to, hold on to, say, Marcus Peters when he was injured. I know he ended up playing, but it looked like he was going to be hurt significantly, and they would have had to hold on to him being injured because they can't place him on IR because then all of a sudden, bye-bye Pharaoh Cooper. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like they do need, short-term disabled lists as well.
That's what you got. I mean, that's the Cup situation now, really.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the Cup situation now. So to me, it's common sense, really. A lot of this stuff is common sense. What's better for the game? And the question I would ask any NFL owner is, what's really better for the game long term? What's better for the game now? Is it better for the game for you to limit the amount of players that are in this league? I'm guessing for the sake of saving money or maximizing your profits. I'm not sure what it actually is. Or is it better to produce the best product on the field? And I'm not sure the NFL really has that figured out right now. Honestly, if they did, the Chargers aren't in LA. They're back in San Diego or somewhere else. If they had their heads straight about this, there are certain things that aren't happening in the league that are. Are happening in the league that aren't.
I think you're hitting it right on the head there, and I think it's something that we probably should cover since it did come up today. I mean, what do you guys think about that? Where do you see the Chargers ending up? I mean, do you think they stay in LA? Do you think this is, something where, the NFL rides along with the storm, or do you think they just pull the plug now?
Oh, they'll ride it out they don't want to look like they were wrong, so they'll ride it out for at least probably 4 or 5 years before they decide to do something different, in my opinion.
I like that mindset. That's so the NFL.
Honestly, Spanos passing away gives them an out. They could always argue, well, Spanos wanted to LA. His son can say, you know what, this is what my dad wanted. Let's go ahead and let's see what we can work out for San Diego. That's an out now. And they didn't really have that before in terms of embarrassment factor. Okay, they can literally throw that guy on the bus, which they've already shown they're willing to do. They threw him on the bus for relocation anyways. So, just on the flip side of it, what's to say, hey, you know what, the NFL going and saying, listen, man, go back to San Diego. We will allocate not the normal. One, we'll refund your relocation fee. Okay. And we'll allocate league funds over to build a stadium. What do you mean? That's the normal, the G3 or whatever it's called. Okay. No, we'll give you more than that. If you can get a medium commitment from San Diego, or worst comes to worst, just say, we'll build your freaking stadium. This is the NFL. They won't do it, but I think they might consider it now. Why? Because what is the only real viable market left over now? It's San Diego. Oakland's not even viable right now.
Maybe St. Louis.
Dude, well, you tell me how St. Louis is viable. They're still paying off the dome.
Oh, absolutely.
They're in worse shape right now in terms of Jeez, you're picking an old wound there, man. The best proposal they had, go back, rewind. The best proposal they had was a 62,000 seat outdoor stadium on the riverfront. What did Kroenke put out? What did he want? If he was going to stay in St. Louis, he wanted a real deal, top of the line stadium that can host a Super Bowl. I don't think any team is going to leave California to go back to St. Louis under a stadium that's 62,000 riverfront. It's just not going to happen. So what's your real option? Really, what's your option right now? San Diego or London? And that's a whole other problem.
Well, I'll throw one in there too. With Paul Allen passing away, rest in peace, Paul. I've known about Paul Allen for a long time, being from Oregon. I'm a Portland Trailblazers fan. He was the owner of that, as well as the Seahawks. The reason that Portland really hasn't had a chance at a NFL team was because he didn't want it, because it would compete against this Seattle market. Most people in Oregon are Seahawks fans, but Portland's a viable option, I think, much more than St. Louis.
Portland. That could.
But Portland's having so many other issues right now, though.
Portland will always have issues, but St. Louis has issues too.
Well, they both do, and but I would say that I wouldn't really view, until some of those issues are solved, I wouldn't view any of them as a real viable problem. And I get what you're saying, because Portland 10 years ago was like the spot, and I think the NFL missed their real chance to expand there because Paul Allen didn't want a team there. And now with all the political issues going on there, and then you look at St. Louis, and St. Louis is just broke, and San Diego is really your option that's left over. If you that fits the market, that fits everything, just put them back.
San Diego makes the most sense, obviously, especially if it is the Chargers. But, like I said, I don't really think the NFL does anything for 4 or 5 years just because they want to admit that they're wrong at anything. And, I can't see – I think it would be a detriment to the team. They couldn't move them for a while anyways unless they took them back to their old stadium, which I don't think anybody wants. So, I'd say it's at least 4 or 5 years before there's a viable option for a team to go to San Diego. If it is the Chargers, so be it. But I would say 4 or 5 years at a minimum.
What about San Antonio with the Alamo Dome?
But you already have the Texans and the Cowboys.
They'll fight that.
Yeah, I don't know if they want a third team.
They'll fight that. I also look at it too is, at some point the NFL needs to take a bath on this. The thing with San Diego and the Chargers was a cluster, from the very beginning, and whether they move them back in 4 or 5 years or move them back now, just pull the freaking Band-Aid off, take a bath on this, and get it done. And I think NFL fans would be much more forgiving of that than you keeping their team away 4 or 5 years and then taking them back because you're trying to save face. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I get what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with you. I know their mindset. I'm saying that the better mindset to me would be just take a bath on it. Admit, hey, you know what? We swung and missed on this. Let's work something out. If San Diego, if you just put in this, we'll pay for your stadium. That to me makes the most sense, but there's a lot of things in the NFL right now that are confusing me. So
yeah. I hear you. It's actually kind of a fun debate because there's so many different areas, and it's a really good. I think this is one of those questions where you could get a bunch of different answers. Someone could give you Alabama. I would shut that down because I would say, look, Alabama Crimson Tide. I would say that they have the 40th highest market in the country as far as NFL. Salt Lake City, Utah, I just don't think would work. I think you have something with Portland. I think you have something with San Antonio. I think you have something with San Diego. And I think those are probably, I mentioned St. Louis kind of as a joke. St. Louis seems more involved in trying to get their soccer team out there or whatever. But I would say those are probably the three best options: Portland, Oregon, San Antonio, and then what was it that I just said? Portland. Oh, San Diego, and then I guess maybe Oklahoma City is like a honorable mention, but I don't even know about that.
You just really going off topic for a second. You mentioned St. Louis and soccer. I don't even think that happens out there for them. And the reason why is simple. FC Cincinnati. The MLS is going to put a team in the Midwest, and it was only going to be one team. They already have eyes somewhere else. I would be really super surprised if St. Louis gets that team.
St. Louis is a baseball town. Baseball and hockey. That's all they've ever really been. The only time that they really had sellout crowds for the Rams was during the Greatest Show on Turf times. But I mean, I don't want to tick anybody off, but I went to several games where I had 4 or 5 seats on each side of me open, even when the Rams weren't horrible. So they never really were a football town, in my opinion. Believe me, there's a lot of faithful, loving fans in St. Louis that would love to have an NFL team there, but I just don't think there's enough of them. So really, they're a baseball and a hockey, and I don't expect anything else to really move in there anytime soon.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. I mean, it was kind of hard for me, growing up in New York as a Rams fan, and they weren't obviously the best team in the league, so trying to get any little bit of inkling on Rams news. Obviously, I didn't know you guys. You guys, I don't think existed back when I was in middle school or whatever. But yeah, I was trying to get some news, and I'd listen to the ESPN.
Are you Steve's age now?
Are you 14, Jake? Or
there's something you need to know because we're in our 6th season, so it's just. Gee, how old are you?
23, man.
Okay, so it's a little bit going back. Okay.
Yeah, but
I've been dying for Rams news for many, many years, and let's just say I'm over a half a century old. So
it was tough though, because the ESPN for St. Louis, it'd be like, I want to hear them talk about how the Rams just finally had their first blowout of the season, and no, all I hear is about Yadier Molina's throw, no-look throw to third when he picked off a guy, or I would hear about Tarasenko and how he's the best young athlete in St. Louis, and I was like, well, what about Todd Gurley? Like, this is the season where, Todd Gurley's rookie year, where it was right after the Cardinals game or whatever, and I'm thinking, wow, they're going to talk about Todd Gurley, and it wasn't middle school. I'm exaggerating that way, but my point is, they're talking about baseball. They're talking about hockey. I just never really got any feeling that they. I don't want to piss off a bunch of people, but it just, I don't know. It seemed like the guys over there that were writing the articles didn't. They looked at the Rams as kind of like how, I guess, in LA we look at the Chargers. Maybe, I mean, like, they were honestly on the back burner for a lot of people.
I'll disagree with you there because people in LA don't even look at the Chargers. So go find another example. I mean,
there are a lot of guys that covered the Rams in St. Louis. That you're right. They not only were they not good at it, but they just didn't seem to care as much. There were a few good ones, but we had a particular beef with one of them all the time. I won't say his name. Derek can if he wants to, but.
You can if you want, but I have a pretty good idea of who it is.
But
this goes back for me. When I was contributing for Yahoo Sports, I wrote an article initially, and I made the case that the team should stay in St. Louis. Okay, and that's when the guys from Bring Back the LA Rams reached out to me and asked me why, and. They knew right where to get me because I'm a history nut. And when they brought back the history for me, and I really looked at the whole picture, the financial picture, I realized that the team is just better off in LA. And this is not anything offensive towards St. Louis, but oh my gosh, people went after me. Like, I had people copying my Facebook profile. I received a couple threats. I had people trying trying to get me fired. It was family got threatened. It really gave me a bad view of those folks who were representing the St. Louis base. And that's just kind of the ones who were running organizations there. You get in the media, there did the city of St. Louis a disservice. Okay, they did. They should just shine this bright light on Kroenke. He's a Missouri guy. He's this and this. And I'm saying, dude, he's a businessman. He's about his product. He may be a Missouri guy, but he owns the Rams. Okay, and he's going to do what's best for his business because that's his job. He's a businessman. And nobody believed folks like me or Norm who were saying that. And all of a sudden he's gone, and these folks who were ignoring that and then went out of the way to trash Kroenke on the way out still blamed him and didn't hold themselves or the city of St. Louis responsible, which is sad because I met a lot of really nice St. Louis fans there. At a lot of these games, they're out there. They're out there having a great time, tailgating, welcoming us. It didn't matter if you were wearing Rams colors, except for like one guy who would be threatening. But anyways, I just look at it and go, the NFL didn't do its best job in St. Louis, but the reality is St. Louis hurt itself back in 1995 when they signed that lease deal. And they hurt themselves when the extension came up in 2004, 2005, when it was time to extend that lease and do their 10-year check, and Frontier waives that. But the warning signs are there at that point. You got to get this stadium as a top-tier stadium because come 2015, this team can move. And St. Louis didn't do that, and the media didn't push the city to do that. And they didn't find answers to taxes. They didn't find answers to anything. And they ignored the facts of the lease. And I'm rambling now. I apologize for that. But that's a much deeper story. And if anybody now wants to move into St. Louis, it's going to be the same darn problem. Because St. Louis just don't have the money. I'm not talking about the fans. The fans I met were good fans. Okay, but it does not have the money. You have to get somebody there who will invest and build their own stadium. And who's going to do that?
Well, and I went back and traveled back to St. Louis and attended the Keep the Rams in St. Louis rally that they had. And, again, there's some very awesome, dedicated fans that really didn't want the team to leave. But one thing I will point out, and it was kind of sad to see, is here's this big rally just blocks away from the Edward Jones Dome. And I took more shirts with me than there were people in the crowd. So if I'd have gave away every shirt, I would have had to have given away 2 or 3 to some people in order to get rid of them all. There was, the attendance was really not that high. And, in comparison to Rams Fest this year down in LA, I mean, Derek can attest to this, how many people were there. And the year before they had to shut the park down because it, went over the permit. So I just don't think you have the fan base there as far as amount of people that are as passionate about the team as you do, in LA. So if you move a team like San Diego there, I just don't know that they would be embraced like they would be if they went back to San Diego.
I definitely agree.
Sorry, man, I ran it there. I'm sorry, dude. You just got me going.
No, I think it's awesome. It's great content, and I think it just, it gives people another insight. I mean, this is the Downtown Rams podcast. I know you guys are Rams Talk, but we're also just NFL fans. And this was a big NFL story that came out today. And I think it's only fair to, give it some light a little bit. I mean, this does have to do with the Rams as well. I mean, if the Chargers leave, are the Rams home free? Do they just take over the Inglewood Stadium and they don't have to share with anyone? There's no way that you could tell me right now the NFL is going to put the Raiders there. I mean, I'm sorry, their fans. There's no way their fans are going to step in that stadium unless they're playing the Raiders. I just don't believe that the Raiders will ever be with the Rams in that stadium. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it.
You're not wrong. I mean, Las Vegas they've already started digging out there for their stadium. So I mean, that deal's done. So, but you know what? If I'm going to throw this out there, and it's probably just lunacy. But what if they said, "Screw this, San Diego. Go back to we're going to move you back there, and we're going to let the Raiders come hang out in L.A. for a couple years while the Vegas stadium's being built."
It could happen, but again,
Because
I
Oakland's
hope
threatening
not.
to sue.
Yeah,
They're out
I
of the
know.
lease. Oakland is suing, I think. And I don't see Kroenke taking that without a fight, but I've seen weird things from the NFL. I feel a little jerky even bringing up that thought, but it just occurred to me that if the Chargers aren't working there, and the Raiders could work there for a couple years, put the Chargers back where they belong, bring the Raiders to LA while they're waiting for the stadium out there in Las Vegas. But if and you would, what would Kroenke say at that point? Would Kroenke say would he be opposed to it? But then he'll say, "Listen, they could tell him, look, we approved you out here already. You know,
Yeah, but
we did you a solid."
nothing in the NFL ever gets approved that quickly. So I really don't see.
I
it
mean,
happening.
I'm just really kind of pondering. I mean, it may be the stupidest pondering imaginable, but given how things have gone, would any of you be surprised if that happened?
I would be surprised if San Diego's back in San Diego in the next 4 or 5 years. It would be 4 or 5 years. I really just don't see it happening because it was a large investment to bring them up here, and they're not going to go back to their old stadium. That's just not going to happen. So they're going to have to build a new one there. It's going to take 2 or 3 years, even if it was approved today. So I don't see it happening for 4 or 5 years if it's going to happen at all.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, mainly because you kind of talked me out of my original thoughts. I could totally see what you're saying. I don't, things like this take time, and again, it took a lot of money to bring them to LA, so I don't know if they're about to just kind of, before they even get into Inglewood Stadium, they're going to just, pull the plug on this. I think they'll kind of, ride it out, especially since, the Chargers are one of the best teams in the AFC now. They're not, a top-tier team, but they're still, one of the more competitive teams. I do think it's funny, guys, because once upon a time we were talking about how, the Raiders have Derek Carr, they're exciting, they got Marshawn Lynch for the time being because they're going to be in Oakland and he's from Oakland, and that'll kind of bring him to Vegas. And Jack Del Rio has really found his stride, and they're 12-4, and they're a playoff team, and they're the most exciting team moving, and they should be in LA, not the Rams. And now all of a sudden, what are the Raiders? I don't know how you're going to sell them to any fan base. I don't know. I don't know if this is going to go over well, honestly, because, Vegas, they'll be fine. Because there was this misconception where people thought Vegas didn't want professional sports there, or rather it had something to do with, the gambling and all that. But, look at the Golden Knights. Even if they were bad last year, they still would have gotten the attendance. But the Golden Knights being good and everything, I went to Vegas right before the season started. I had my Golden Knights hat on, and I got all these different compliments. I'm in Vegas right now. Why are you shocked that I'm wearing a Golden Knights hat? Then again, I'm from New York, and I picked them because they were a brand new team, and they didn't even have players yet. But that's besides the point. Point is, people were really excited for this team before the season even started. I saw jerseys, literal 0-0 no-name jerseys, because they just couldn't wait. There were so many people hyped for the Golden Knights, and then they really rallied around them when they were in the playoffs. And I just don't know, though, how well that'll go with the Raiders, because I don't know. Now all these rumors out, Carr's available after the end of the season. So what, now you're not going to have a franchise quarterback, and you didn't bring back Khalil Mack, and it's just now everyone's for sale. It just seems like a really bad sell to any market, to be we have this Raiders team that was 12-4 3 years ago. That's going to be your sell. What do they have? Draft picks.
And supposedly they're shopping Amari Cooper, and
It's
Yeah, I hear
ridiculous.
Yep.
Garyon Conley, he was a first rounder. What, last year, 2 years ago? I mean, now we don't like him. Like what? What?
I know a lot about Garyon Conley, and if the Raiders traded him, they're idiots.
It's too talented. Just get rid of. Way too talented. And you took a chance on all of that, and I think it was all noise, honestly, if you ask me. But all of that pre-draft stuff, like they drafted in the first round, even with all of that. And again, I feel like that was all noise. But my point is, you drafted a guy like that, now you're going to get rid of him. Don't understand it.
Yeah.
Oh, Lordy. Okay. What
So,
else you got? What else you want to argue about?
I think we're doing a pretty good job, boys. Pretty good podcast, and we're gonna wrap this thing up. Quick little debate question, because I did post a little poll on Twitter, and I have made the argument that I do believe Robert Woods is the best receiver on the Rams right now. With that being said, is Robert Woods a top 10 receiver at this point in time?
Don't answer all at once.
Yeah, I was giving that some real thought, and I'm going to say, oh Lordy, depends.
Well,
are you looking for the idea of numbers, or are you looking for the idea of the impact he has on the team?
I'm just
There's two
talking
things.
like top 10. Like if you're talking best receivers in the league, is he a top 10 receiver right now?
I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say he's at the bottom of the 10, but I'd say he's a top 10 right now, just because of the fact that Cooper Kupp going out is gonna hurt. Brandon Cooks, if he went out, it would hurt. But Robert Woods can run any of the routes and any of the positions, and he's helping everybody out there. And look at the production that the Rams are getting, and I don't think they'd be getting it without him. So I think he makes that much of an impact that he would be a top 10 receiver right now.
All right, so I'm going to roll with I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say he is, based on his entire body of work, what does he provide? He can play on the outside, he can play on the inside. He blocks. The man blocks like a man. Okay. Like this guy is what you bring to that passing game is one thing, what you bring to the entire offense is another. And so if I'm looking for an all-around receiver, Robert Woods has become that. So and also, he's got 10 plus 20-yard receptions already this year. So that puts him at a tie for third in the league. And that's impressive as well. So put that whole package together. Yeah, I'm going to roll with Robert Woods there in the top 10.
And this has got to be a first that he agrees with me. I mean, if you listen to our podcast, that never happens.
I do listen to your podcast, and I do know that never happens. Oh boy!
I mean, the question would be, top 10 playmaking wide receivers versus top 10 blocking receivers. But you're talking top 10 all around, and I don't think you can get around everything he brings to that offense right now. He's really developed into a guy who's actually probably underpaid by a lot right now.
I did say that. I was saying it's like you get a 24-year-old receiver for $8 million. That was Spotrack's market value. I just felt like that was a no-brainer. So before the offseason free agency started, I was like, the Rams should target Pierre Garçon and they should target Robert Woods. And they didn't get Garçon, and I was happy because I saw that price tag and I was like, whoa. The 49ers threw the kitchen sink at Garçon. Was not doing that. But then when I saw the Rams, get Woods and then Whitworth, I was like, okay. Like, they didn't even spend as much on Whitworth as the 49ers did on Garçon. With that being said, guys, it's a kind of a two-part thing. right now, Robert Woods is a top 10 receiver as far as this season. Overall, though, I actually have him as a top 15 receiver. I think the Rams have 3 top 16 receivers on the roster, and I think Robert Woods is 12th. I actually have a list, so that's why I brought it up. I have Odell Beckham Jr. number 1. I have Antonio Brown number 2. DeAndre Hopkins 3. Adam Thielen 4. Julio Jones 5. Michael Thomas 6. AJ Green 7. Tyreek Hill 8. Keenan Allen 9. Jarvis Landry 10. Mike Evans 11. And Robert Woods 12. I think when you look at what Robert Woods brings to the table, I think people are going to look more at the name. Like, oh, it's Robert Woods, the 500-yard-a-year guy in Buffalo. But this guy is the best guy in the Rams receiver group, and that's saying a lot since they have a lot of talent. He is interchangeable, can play on the outside or inside. He's a great blocker. That's one of the reasons why I felt like Sean McVay was going to target him. He had to be, because he came from Buffalo, and no one ran the ball more than Buffalo over the last 4 seasons he was there, or however long he was there. They had Sammy Watkins and Robert Woods, and I swear to you, there were only a few games where they threw over 25 passes. It was a run-first offense, and they used a lot of blocking out of Woods, and he, because of that, was underrated, and because of that, he was underpaid, because it was actually a really good deal for the Rams, because you knew, watching the film, you saw against, a little bit of a small sample size against the Seahawks, that primetime game, he came through big time when Sammy Watkins was injured, came over, it was 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, I believe, and, he had a great game. That was kind of his little coming out party. I believe that was his contract year as well. So I do think, he just adds so much to this team. And one thing that I noticed, and this goes back to last year when I was at the Coliseum, I noticed his ability to improvise. If everywhere Goff's looking, guys are covered, he is constantly working to find his way open. He plays similar to Garcon, but I also, he's got a little bit of Antonio Brown in him when, Antonio Brown gets a little open and throws his arm up in the air, lets Ben know where to put it. Robert Woods is constantly working, and the Rams are so lucky to have him, Kupp, and Cooks signed, as long as they have them. After Woods, I have Brandon Cooks at 13, Stephon Diggs at 14, Juju Smith-Schuster at 15, Doug Baldwin at 16, Cooper Kupp at 17, T.Y. Hilton at 18, Allen Robinson at 19, Devontae Adams at 20. So that's my list. I could be quote-unquote wrong, but that's kind of what I came up with. Right now, though, Woods is a top 10 receiver this season, and I think it's going to be a cool opportunity because, last year he didn't have the opportunity to really come close to 100 yards due to the injury he suffered in the Vikings game. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him now, being able to be the guy. Hopefully, knock on wood, he stays healthy, and all these guys go over 1,000 yards like I said they were going to.
That'd be awesome.
It sure would. Anyone want to comment on my list about how wrong I am?
I just think you have a lot of time on your hands.
Yeah, I don't think you're too far off. I'd have to do my own list to compare, but I don't think you're too far off from what I heard.
I think the one thing I would argue is maybe I have Michael Thomas too low because he's just phenomenal. But just watching Adam Thielen, I think right now, since we're talking about Robert Woods being a top 10 receiver right now, I would say Adam Thielen might be the best in the game right now this season. So he's the only guy besides Woods that has had over 4 straight 80-plus yard games this season. Only guy.
He's a stud, that's for sure.
He definitely is. Well, guys, I think you made it through. No one fell asleep, despite the fact that I was told that would happen.
Well, Norman's had to directly inject caffeine into his arm at least 4 times. You can't see that.
Oh, my God. Well, maybe we'll do a live podcast, and the next time people can see it.
Well, I am the old guy, so, got to be up and ready to go at 5 a.m.
He's more than, decrepit. Okay. Yeah. I'm getting the middle finger right now, I promise you. I can guarantee he's giving me the middle finger right now.
Two of them.
Gave me two. Yeah, told you.
Oh my God. Well, you guys are awesome. I look forward to joining you on your side after the game against the 49ers. Hopefully, the Rams have a nice fat W, and we're talking about good things, because it's always harder to talk about bad things. But that's going to do it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. For Jake Ellenbogen, they are Rams Talk. And again, this has been another Downtown Rams podcast. It's been 131 episodes. So, guys, have anything to say before we skedaddle?
I'm ready to go to sleep. Follow us on Rams Talk Rams on Twitter and on Facebook. We have a group, all that jazz. Subscribe, iTunes, reviews. We appreciate all that stuff. And thanks for having us on.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us, Jake.
Hey, it was a lot of fun, and again, I look forward to joining you guys later on in the week.
You got it.
All right.
All right, that's a wrap.
Adios.